have the grants officers. The grants officers are going to help with this training to help you understand how to get paid and how to submit your quarterly reports with the least amount of difficulty. When we get to the when we have to change to the forms, the 425 and the 270, I'll change the screens at that point. Now, the purpose of this training is to help you understand the expectation and for you to tell us if we are misunderstanding the situation. And what I mean by that is just today, I discovered that the instructions that we created for you for the SF 425 form, we didn't understand that the form is fillable with drop-down boxes and embedded edits and validations. So it was easy enough for me to say, for our program, you can leave this blank. But the form that some of you have, there are various different forms on the internet. Some of you had a form that had edit validations that wouldn't allow you to leave it blank. So we don't know everything, and it's important that our conversations are two-way. That if we give you instructions, we tell you to do something, if it's impossible for you or extremely difficult and just doesn't seem to make sense, please let us know so that we can reconsider whether or not what we're doing is the best thing for the program. So with that being said, we're hoping for this to be a two-way communication. We're going to provide training and let you know our expectations. If you don't understand it, please ask the question. If you think it might be a problem, please bring it up to us so that we can either clarify your understanding or reconsider our position. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start this presentation. And here is our agenda. We're going to first talk about the 1806, that's the quarterly performance report. And I'm going to have Yolanda, Robin, and Natalie are going to help with that. So is Yolanda or Robin, are you going to share that from your screen or do you want me to share it?
Sherry, can you go ahead and share it?
Yep, I'll bring it up and you just tell me when you're ready for the next slide. Nope, that's the wrong one. Pardon me, folks. So sorry, just one moment. I've closed it on my screen and now I'm trying to get it to reopen, so please bear with me. Okay, it's opening now. I really apologize for that delay. I hope you can't see me blushing.
So Sherry, it's smaller, or it's only got half the slide?
Can you see it?
I can only see half of it.
Can you try sharing the entire screen versus the just the presentation? Maybe that would work.
Okay, just a moment. Let me try again. I'm going to stop screen share and try again.
And
Can
Sherry,
you-
just
is that
for
better?
everyone, I also shared the attachments in the chat because I think some people didn't get the email.
That's good, Sherry. I can see it.
Okay. Okay, let me just verify that I am able to change. Okay. Okay, Robin, are you ready?
Yeah. So
Robin and Natalie? Okay,
Yolanda and Natalie are going to go over what is reportable and what isn't reportable on the 1806. And we're going to be going basically over part 2 of the terms and conditions and appendix A of the terms and conditions. The next slide. So in part 2, it gives a list of the counseling services you should be providing, and for businesses to receive counseling services, they must be eligible, and the clients may include large businesses, small, capable of obtaining or performing under contracts, innovation and technology grants, and other DoD funded instruments. With DoD and other federal agencies, state or local governments, and with the federal, state, or local government contractors or subcontractors at any tier. So they must be capable, they must have the capable to provide government services. You must not limit services to the businesses based solely on their size, their time in business, or the quantity of employees. They must meet the overreaching requirement that their potential for success in government contracting is in the near term, is apparently only limited due to the lack of registration in SAM and or understanding of the government contracting process. So they have to basically have the capability of providing government services. So the next slide. Providing clients with counseling and information regarding marketing of their products and services to DoD, other federal agencies, state and local governments, and government prime contractors and subcontractors. Counseling must be one-on-one and free of charge. Counselors must assist clients with the understanding of government and government prime contractor requirements applicable to contracting for services, manufacturing, construction, and our marketing, other markets. Next slide. Services that PTAC must offer is identifying marketing opportunities for clients, advising and assisting clients with the preparation and the proper submission of the application, certification, registration to prepare them for doing business with federal, state, and local government entities, advising and assisting clients concerning post-award functions, advise and assist clients in pursuing and securing subcontracting opportunities from federal, state, and local government prime contractors and subcontractors at any tier. Next slide. At a minimum, the PTAC must make available advice and assistance on the following topics at no cost to the businesses: federal, state, and local government contract laws, policies, and procedures, emphasis must be placed on requirements and procedures used by DoD and other federal agencies, including registration and systems such as SAM, the DoD Mentor Protege Program, and similar government programs.
Robin, let me cut in right there to say something. So this list is in the terms and conditions, and it's specifically in the award specific terms and conditions. So these are the areas that we can change whenever we want to from year to year. And these are the areas that I expect OSD will have interest in tweaking. They'll probably want PTACs to focus more in one area and less in other areas. So these are subject to change at any time. But I think we can, and you have this list in the terms and you have it in here in this chart deck. So, well, in just the interest of moving forward, unless you have questions on the list, I'll skip to the next chart, Robin.
Okay, that's good.
Or maybe I won't. There we go. The prohibitions, go ahead.
Yeah, procurement technical assistance does not include general business training or financial assessments, assistance to pre-startup or newly started businesses. You must remember that your clients must be ready to get a government contract at that time they're receiving services. If they're not ready, or if they don't have the capability to provide government services, they should not be they're not eligible to receive our services. They should probably go to the SBDC or another small business office or something. They're not appropriate for the PTACs. We shouldn't be providing employee developmental related training, advise or participate in the client's decision to protest or file claims. Once a client has filed a protest or claim, the PTAC must not provide further counseling on matters that are subject to that specific claim or protest. PTACs may counsel clients regarding their rights to file a protest and claims, including applicable time limits for and venues of these processes. Again, we do not assist them in filing the protest. We just show them their rights and what processes they need to follow.
I have a question.
Sure.
On a newly started business, what are we referring to? Someone who started yesterday or somebody who started a year? Because we do get businesses where the owner has been in the industry for many, many years and knows exactly what he's doing. So even though it's a startup business, they are, I should say, capable of doing government work.
Right, so they would be appropriate. It's the ones that do not have, that come into your office and they can't decide what they want to sell.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. Okay, thank you.
Okay, do you understand?
I'm good.
Okay, next slide, Sherry. So now we're going to go over, this is the definitions and the documentation standards that are included in the Appendix A of the terms and conditions. And this is where it really tells you what is applicable and what isn't applicable. For an active client is a contractor with which the PTAC has recorded at least 30 minutes of counseling time and or has attended at least one participated event during a previous 12-month period. So for an active client, you must maintain documentation such as the contractor's name, their physical address, a point of contact for them, if it's applicable, their category, if they're small or large business, and evidence that the contractor has explicitly stated intent to become a PTAC client, and information that substantiates the contractor's status as an active client. So you must keep this documentation. If a grants officer or someone asks, you must be able to provide it. So the next slide.
Robin,
Yes.
this is Melanie. I just have a clarifying question. It's okay for all of this to be electronic, correct? Like within our
Yes.
client database? Okay.
Yes. And I know some people, like what they do is they upload the sheet they have the client sign into Neosera or PTSS. I know some of the site visits that I went on that I was able to see everything right there in their database. They upload the documents, anything outstanding, but the information in the database is right there, and that's sufficient. So,
Robin, we have another question in the chat box. Is there a
Okay.
difference between an active client and a DLA active client?
no, I don't know what that means.
It would depend on the database system that you use. With PT Assist, the CMS system, it's the same for us, but that's because as program manager, I've told them what I want active to mean.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't think there would be any difference. Is there any other questions, Sharon?
Just checking. Nope.
Okay. So for counseling time is the time a PTAC staff member spends one-on-one interacting with a client, to include the preparation time that is attributable to the specific interaction. Time that is attributable to the individual client during the professional guidance specific to the needs of the client is provided. The interaction may be in person or via electronic media. It is tracked using the actual number of qualifying minutes and hours. If multiple PTAC staff members or individuals representing the client participate simultaneously, you can only count it once. For instance, if you have two counselors sit into the counseling session and for an hour long, each counselor can count a half hour, or one counselor can count the whole hour and the other counselor can count nothing. You just can't count it twice.
Robin, you're fading in and out a little bit. So
Okay, wait, let me move my laptop closer. So the time the PTAC spends reading and or responding to a specific inquiry received from a client is considered reportable counseling time. You may not count any other type of email correspondence as counseling time. So if you're sending out newsletters or an email to a client to let them know about an upcoming participated event, or if you're emailing them, telling them, hey, I noticed your DUNS number or your SAM registration is going to expire soon. Let me know if you need my help. That is not counseling. You must be responding to a specific inquiry from the client. Counselors must only report counseling time with active clients. The client must be considered active when the counseling time occurred. However, if the client might fall off the rolls before the end of the quarter, and if that happens, you can still count that counseling time because they were active when you actually provided the counseling. The only exception to the requirement that counseling time is spent one-on-one with a client is counseling when you're counseling clients in a teaming relationship. When you have two clients that are looking at teaming up for a requirement or something, you can counsel two at the same time. You must not count travel time or admin time as counseling. So neither one of those types of events count as counseling. Okay, the next slide.
Sorry, Robin, this is Mick. I had a quick question. What about when clients don't show up to meetings and you're waiting for them?
That's not counseling.
Okay, so even though they responded to you and said they're gonna make it to the meeting and you're waiting and you still waste your time, it's not counseling, so you don't get to count it.
No. Mm-mm.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
I have a question. What can you define administrative a little bit better? If I was confirming an appointment with a client that has already reached out to me and asked some questions, does the appointment setting or confirmation is considered administrative, or is that an interaction with a client?
Well,
Thank
if you're responding to it said you're confirming your appointment, it is administrative. But if you're giving professional guidance in that email to the client to a specific question that they ask that you're responding to, it can be considered counseling. But if you're just sending an email confirming your appointment, that's administrative. Did I answer it? Was that clear enough?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Robin,
Yeah.
this is Natalie. Make sure you make the distinction between administrative and prep time, because prep time, everybody's counting time that they're preparing for those counseling sessions if you're researching that type of stuff.
Right. I think prep time is on the next slide, Natalie,
Okay.
but maybe it's not. I can't see. So
let's talk about that a little bit, just to make sure everybody's clear, because we don't define admin time. I think admin time is a code that you can put in to your Neosera or PT Assist database, but it's not anything that we've defined. We allow you to count the time that it takes for you to prepare for the counseling session and the time that you're actually counseling the person. So depending on what you're doing to prepare for the session, I mean, I wouldn't, even if you were just confirming an appointment, I can't imagine that would even really be 1 minute. So anyway, grants officers, if you want to talk more about that, but I see Melanie, you have your hand raised.
Yes, and it just left my head. I'll let Frank go. Come back to me.
Frank?
Oh, thanks, Melanie. So, Sherry, I just want to, backtrack on what the gentleman said prior to, as far as waiting for a client and they cancel. If we're counting prep time and we've prepped, 15, 20 minutes based on some questions that the client, anticipation of answering the client's questions during the counseling, they don't show up. So I'm a bit confused as to how we don't count at least 15 minutes for the cancellation if we put 15 minutes into the prep. We can't not count prep and then not count them not showing up. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Right, but what we think of as prep time is probably you opening the client's file in Neosera and reviewing where you left off with them last time and before the meeting, so that you have it fresh in your mind and you're considering any new information you might want to share with that client once you see them. And other instances that we think of for prep time are maybe a client asks you or lets you know that they want to talk about a certain topic, and then you refresh your knowledge and make sure you have the latest and greatest about that particular topic so that you are well prepared to counsel them when they get there. We're not interested in counting no-shows or the amount of time that you spend on no-shows. We want to be able to report the amount of hours you spent giving service to a business. That's what we're trying to capture. And when you're researching, what is the Army buying this year for a client that says they want to come talk to you to get help about what the Army's buying this year, the person isn't sitting next to you, but you are helping them at the moment when you are doing that research. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to capture with prep time.
Sherry.
Thank you.
Yes, but I feel like I've taken over. Natalie or Robin can answer this question probably. So I want to pipe back down. So ask your question, Melanie.
So I was going back to the administrative piece of the counseling. I shared all of my administrative sessions with the grants officers during the application process, because I felt it was important for them to see that we're doing stuff, and I'm not counting like reminders or meeting confirmations as administrative. I'm more thinking, we let them know that their SAM was expiring, or, we found a solicitation that we came across, but we didn't have that dialogue, but, that's something that we're not counting as counseling, but it's administrative. We don't have that much, but I do think it's important to keep track of and share during the application process.
I think that's excellent too.
Yeah. And because I believe I do ask, when I'm asking questions during the application process, if you have other things you are doing, if you express that to me, that's very good information for me to have when I'm looking at how the PTAC is spending their time. So, but for the documentation standards for counseling time in the database, you must have the amount of time you counseled, the client's name, the date of the counseling, the name of the PTAC staff member, the counselor that logged the counseling time, and a brief description of the assistance provided. And that brief description is really important because the grants officers are taking over the performance review. O&R and DCMA will no longer be doing that kind of work. So we have to look at that spreadsheet. We have to look in that database. And when you're just copying an email and pasting it into the database, we do not get a good picture of the services you provided. That brief description should give us like a quick overview of what was provided. Plus, it will help if you are out and someone else has to step in your shoes, and you can clearly see what steps had been taken previously and what the next step should be when you give a brief description. But when you're like copying an email and pasting it or anything like that, or putting a one-word sentence, helped with Sam, or something like that, that it doesn't give us a clear picture of the services that were provided. Next slide, please. Okay, here's a few definitions. Like a covered small business means a small business concern that received a DoD contract pursuant to a solicitation that included the provision of the DFARS 252.19-700, advancing small business growth. And I know some PTECs are reporting covered small businesses on their 1806. And the grants officer might come back to you to ask you what processes you have in place to determine that that business is an actual covered small business, because you have to have a process in place on how you're determining that. Not all businesses are covered small businesses. And then your distressed area concerns means a client located in the distressed area, which is based on the physical address of the client's primary location. So if you have a client like who's located here in Fairfax County, where I live, and they have a satellite office in, say, Henry County, Virginia, and Henry County is distressed. However, Fairfax County is non-distressed. That client cannot be counted as a distressed client, even though they have a satellite office in Henry County. They're non-distressed because their headquarters or their primary location is here in Fairfax. So a new client is a contractor that meets the standards of an active client, but was not considered an active client for the prior reporting period. So the next slide, please. And so the documentation standards for the new client is the exact same ones as the active client. The name, the amount of time, and everything's the same. So the next slide.
Robin?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Ron. Looking at Appendix A on the documentation standards, it reads, you must maintain documentation to substantiate the active client's report, which must include the physical address of the contracted primary location, which may rely on the client's representation as to what address to consider its primary location. Where exactly does it say we must have a process to verify?
No, you have to have a process to verify if they're a covered small business. Not all businesses are covered small businesses. The only businesses that are considered a covered small businesses are ones that have awards, have been given an award that has the provision 252.219-700. So if you're claiming that small business is a covered small business, you have to have a process in place that shows us how you determine this business was a covered small business. Because not all small businesses are covered small businesses.
The reason why that's important is because PTECs are entitled to 100% federal share of funds to serve covered small businesses. We have not ever yet seen a single legitimate covered small business PTEC client, but since it has been in place for years now, it's possible that a few of you have encountered them, but generally we think that it was a law that was put in place that wasn't really very useful to the small business community or able to be executed by the government. So we don't think that it's used very much. So for the most part, we believe if we ever see that you've taken credit for a covered small business in your 1806, we think it's a mistake. But if you do have legitimate covered small businesses and you have their solicitation that shows that that DFARS clause is in it and they were awarded a contract, you are entitled to 100% federal share to provide service to that client. Robin, you have another question in the box. Someone has a question of, so first, Melanie says, if you don't have a process in place to verify that a business is a covered small business, then you shouldn't report any, correct?
Yes, well, you have to have a process in place to determine if they're a covered small business, you know, because, and then if you're reporting it as a covered small business, the grants officer might ask you, how did you determine this is a covered small business? So there has to be a process in place.
So we have a couple other questions back about distressed service areas. Someone would like to know, what is the criteria for a distressed area? And is there an easy online way to check to see if a physical address is distressed?
Well, on the distressed, it's the, we're using the counties that were determined to be distressed in the application process. Like some PTACs have dual budgets and some PTACs are totally distressed. And to be considered distressed, they have to have their per capita income has to be below 80%, or the unemployment rate has to be 1% above the national unemployment rate. So, and those are the two criterias, and they're on the PTAC website. There's a slide deck that gives directions on how to determine if a county is distressed or non-distressed. And plus your grants officer could help you determine, but we don't pick out cities, it's counties or equivalents. It's like a city here and a city there cannot be distressed. It's the whole county.
And if you are not receiving distressed funding in your award, you are not required to break down your clients by distressed or non-distressed. And so you don't have to report the distressed clients that you're serving. So if you don't receive distressed funding, meaning that you're receiving a greater percent of federal funds to serve distressed clients, you don't have an obligation to keep track of distressed clients. There's a question about active client, Robin. If a client hasn't been active for the past year and comes back for advice, is this client considered a new client?
In accordance with the definition, yes, they are considered a new client. If the client hasn't received services within the last year, last 12-month period, they're considered a new client.
Okay, I'm just going to check for more questions.
Terry, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, and I think I've probably talked about this with Robin at one point, but what's to prevent like a program that's not meeting their new client goals from then letting clients fall off and then re-engaging them just so they could get new clients?
There's nothing that will prevent them from doing that, but if it wouldn't be to me, it wouldn't be wise to do that, because if they're not engaging them during the year, they're losing out on the ability to provide counseling to them. If they're waiting for them to fall off the rolls just so they can become new clients again, that's hurting their counseling goals. So it would be counterproductive to do something like that.
There's a question in the box. Is there an effort underway to review the physical location? Oops, just one moment. My chat box moved and I lost the question. Is there an effort to review the physical location of all active clients per PTAC location in an effort to ensure the client is assigned and working with the appropriate PTAC office? And no, there is no such effort, because if we let the business choose where they want to receive their PTAC services. You, as a PTAC program manager, have applied to serve a certain county, and that probably means your funding stakeholder is giving you money to serve a certain county, and they don't want you serving other counties. If your stakeholders don't mind that you serve other counties and you're not receiving distressed funding, meaning you're not receiving a greater share of federal fund because you're serving distressed clients, then you're free to serve other clients that are outside your service area to a small extent. The terms and conditions say that you should generally limit yourself to serving clients in your agreed upon service area, but that you can serve clients outside your area as long as you forget if it says collaborate or consult with the PTAC who is awarded that service area. You don't have to get approval from that other PTAC, but you do need to collaborate with them, which means you have to at least send them an email to let them know that you're serving a client that's primary location is inside their service area. But no, DLA is not undertaking any kind of effort to make sure that you're serving clients in your service area, with the exception to those of you receiving distressed funding. If you receive distressed funding, we do have to ensure that you are only serving distressed businesses. And
Sherry,
yes.
There's been a discussion in the past about helping businesses that either want to do business in the state or with the state, or even any local government. Plus, if there had been any employees living in that state. So is this still the case? Do we get to help clients who live in the state but may have an entity outside of the state?
So as what you're asking, an employee of a business
Residing,
is asking for PTAC services by but that's not where their business's location is. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes,
Well,
so there is some sort of presence in the state, meaning that there is an employee hired in that state and is doing business or trying to do business in that state as well. And they've reached out to, example, Kentucky PTAC to help with certain contracts. However, their entity is actually located somewhere else.
well, I'm thinking about your question. I don't think that PTACs have to become detectives. If a business representative comes to you and says that they need help participating in the government contracting process, and that person asserts to you that their business location is within your service area, I think it is fine for you to provide service to them. I don't think you need to look deeply into their entire business hierarchy. There would be worse things to happen than Boeing having 2 or 3 PTACs providing assistance to them throughout the country. So please just follow the terms and conditions. And if you have some situation that you are very concerned and want your grants officer to give you an answer about, please reach out directly to that grants officer. I want to leave you with our primary concern is that we are not breaking the law by giving you more federal money than you're entitled to receive. So our primary concern is that if we give you distressed funding, that you are serving distressed clients. So I want to move on because we do need to conclude and we're not even near the end. For those of you that have specific questions, please reach out to your grants officer. But let's see where we are with the charts so that we can at least get through most of this before we need to conclude. I'm going to see the documentation standards, participated event definition, and go ahead.
So for a participated event, it's a workshop, conference, seminar, or other event which the PTAC staff participated to conduct PTAC business. To be reportable, the PTAC participation in the event must be recognized by the organizers. For example, the PTAC hosted the event, they're on the agenda, they were provided exhibit space. They can be training, outreach, promotional events. Only events attended by contractors that are clients or prospective clients are reportable. Just to go to an event and the audience is not appropriate. If it's an event like, say, like you're going to a SBDC event for boots to business, that's not an appropriate event for the PTAC because those events are for people like military individuals who aren't out of the military and are just now starting up their business. Those are not appropriate events for PTACs. So next slide. So at a minimum, PTACs are expected to present group training 12 times a year. They're supposed to host and present this training, and then they're supposed to have at least 15 events per year. This event can be in person or via electronic media, such as Zoom, a live stream video training. The PTAC staff must be present and participating in the event. You can report an event if you're co-hosting and it meets your standards. And you can't count a single event which is comprised of multiple breakout sessions. So if you have a conference that has 8 breakout sessions, that is one event. That is not 8 events. Next slide. So for the documentation standards, you have to have your, yeah.
You have a question in the chat. If the SBA invites the PTAC to present the government contracting portion on their Boots to Business training event, we tell them no. Is that a yes or no?
We tell them no. They can still do it as outreach, but it's not counted as a participated event because
Right.
the audience is not an appropriate audience. The audience is not ready to hit the ground running with a government contract.
And the SBA is not a client.
Right.
I'm going to unmute myself. I'm the one asking the questions. This is Anna. I'm going to disagree with that because I, in the past, have been invited to those, and they're not just new business. In this particular case, we're talking about the veterans. There are those that have existing businesses and are just looking for assistance and don't know where to go. So, I mean, how do you gauge that?
Well, you have to make sure your audience, the event you're going to has the proper audience.
Always do. So, I mean, in this case, and I know they do, and that's a discussion I've had with the SBA. you know, that's why in the past I haven't turned them down. They just haven't done them recently.
Well,
Um,
normally on mine, when I see Boots to Business, I don't allow them as participated events. They can be outreach events. You can go and outreach at those events, but they're not.
But if there's businesses there that are capable of selling, they're just, you know, sometimes veterans just like to do their thing. And hear maybe about refining some other processes that they have within their actual business themselves, like their business plans, what have you. I mean, how can we just disregard that?
Well, Robin said
And then
we agree to go present as outreach. Can't count it as a participated event because the advertising campaign for Boots to Business is for active duty military people who are ready to depart the military service who want to start a business. So by its very nature, it is an entrepreneurial program and does not seem a best fit for the PTAC effort. But as she said, it may constitute outreach if you attend enough. We understand every local SBA office might run their program slightly different. And if you attend enough and you find it valuable, you could probably provide some kind of evidence to your grants officer to show that you attended these events these last few months and you obtained this many active clients who are not entrepreneurs, who are actual legitimate PTAC clients. But
well,
that
of course,
not,
I would request the sign-in sheet so that I have it. And and in advance, I always request to see who's registered to make sure that there is an audience. I mean, but knowing that there is an audience, I don't see how we just count that as an outreach event versus a participated event. Because I mean, I would be going there with the intent to capture those 2 to 3 other businesses and assist them. They want assistance with getting, you know, registered as VA certified businesses so they can start selling directly to the VA.
right, but they're not even in business. They're not going to be found to be responsible.
Well, I guess in our region, they allow more than just you know, start at those that are directly out of the military. It's typically military
Sherry,
and
in
veteran-owned
Arkansas,
businesses.
it's very similar to what Anna's describing. And we teach that government contracting module on a quarterly basis at our Air Force Base. And like Anna was saying, we typically get anywhere from 2 to 5 from each of those trainings that are existing business owners. Could be spouses of business owners.
This is Joanne from Vermont. I just wanted to chime in really quickly. In our case, when we do those Boots to Business, they're at National Guard, like held at the National Guard. And in similar situation, in those cases, Guard is not always full time. Most of them are doing, and I shouldn't say most of them, but some of them have businesses or have already started and are in the Guard, and they're like looking for the opportunities when they transition out of the Guard to continue developing their companies. So National Guard Boots to Business events, you know, there are business owners there.
Okay, so let's return to not just carte blanche saying you can't count Boots to Business. Let's return to you need to follow the terms and conditions, and you need to present material at appropriate events where there are capable and ready businesses. How about that? Let's leave it at that. We're not going to say whenever we see Boots to Business, we're going to disallow it. You need to use judgment about where it is appropriate for you to conduct outreach and where it is appropriate for you to count something as a participated event. And when your grants officer, if your grants officer asks you about it, you should have considered which it is and have an answer for your grants officer. I counted it as an event. It meets the definition of event because of X, Y, or Z. Okay, so we're going to move on because
Thank you, appreciate that.
Just for time. Okay, so the reportable or not exercises, we are not going to go through them today, although they are fun and I think they are very useful, but you all have the chart deck, so you can go through them on your own, test your knowledge, share the information with your employees, and if you have a question about why we determined an answer to be the correct answer, please reach out to us and we can provide you more information about that. So I'm just scrolling through here to find out if the end, okay, so it ends, the slide deck ends with reach out to your grants officer or our generic inbox. And then I'm going to bring back up our chart deck. Hopefully I grabbed the right one this time. And because we have this, here is an image of the 1806 and a reminder that the instructions for completing the 1806 are in Appendix A of the terms and conditions. And you are submitting the electronic version of the 1806 into the grant management system. As we know, it has blocks for your reportable hours and events, as well as blocks 11 through 13, which are narrative blocks. And those narrative blocks are the perfect place for you to report things to us that aren't counseling, but occupy your time. So if you're finding it a challenge because many of your clients are no-shows, you can write about that in the challenges block. If you are volunteering time for AppTech, you can talk about that in the successes block. If you've had outreach with government agencies and you want us to know, or if you've spent a lot of admin time doing something, you can report all of those things in blocks 11 through 13. You're also going to report your contracts. We would like to know about all the contracts that your clients get. We don't want you to spend all your time collecting this data, and that's why we've tried to make it streamlined and have authorized you to pull data from FPDS. But we really truly do want to know about the contracts that your clients get, the subcontracts that they get. So please do provide that data to us. It makes our program look really great. It's the what's in it for Congress, frankly. They want to know what you've done, how you've helped businesses. So they want to know about those contracts. And if you report your contract dollars to us, then we are able to report that up to Congress as a success of the PTAP program. Your survey results, those are an average of all the surveys. The questions that you're required to ask clients are also in Appendix A of the terms and conditions. And we want to stress that the PMs have to do a database validation. Yes, you train your employees, you know that they're doing great things, but you have to look into your database to see what they're typing in there and to see if it makes sense. The grants officers, as part of their performance monitoring, they are receiving some data from your database when you submit your next year's award application. We have you send that data to them at that time because it's a most convenient time for you to send it so that we can review it while you're still performing. And the things that you really need to look at that we notice is the amount of prep time that your employees are recording reasonable? Are they recording 10 hours of prep time for a 30-minute counseling session? I mean, maybe it is reasonable. Maybe you'll have an explanation for why it is. But if you have the same person doing it 10 times, I bet you'll be concerned. So just look at it and try to identify trends. Is one person doing it? Is one person's recording far different from everybody else on your team? And if so, why? Are they right and everybody else wrong? Is their job just different from everybody else's? Just take a look at what they're reporting and see if it makes sense to you. We also want you to look for one-way communication where your staff is reporting emails or news blasts or anything of that sort, and look for out of scope topics. Did they write that they were counseling an entrepreneur? Maybe you know who that client was and they weren't really a startup. And so maybe you can guide them to discussing that client in a different, more appropriate way that won't cause us concern. You know that they're not actually a startup, and that would lead us to misunderstand. So just look for that kind of thing. And also check your employees' work output in the way that we look at it. I'm sure you see them and you know they're busy every day and you have them doing many things, one of which might be counseling, but look at what they're reporting in there to see if what's the number of hours that's recorded is what you thought. And if it doesn't, if not, you can take action, but we want you to look at that data the way that we look at it so that you can take action and redirect if necessary. Or when we ask a question, maybe you'll know, yeah, I know Bobby Joe only recorded 10 hours of counseling, but I have that person very busy doing something else. So just take a look at that. And now I'm going to move into the discussion for getting paid for the SF 425, the quarterly financial report, and the grant voucher. And I want to say when we start this conversation that the 425 turned out to be surprisingly more problematic than I expected. I knew that we noticed that PTACs were putting different data in the blocks. Like some of you were reporting the payments you requested, and some of you were putting the payments received. I mean, it was not standard what people were putting in the blocks. And so this is new to us because we didn't used to receive your 425. That's a performance monitoring function that DCMA and ONR used to do. So this year we took over that function and we started looking at the 425 and your grant voucher. And we noticed that what you were putting on the form didn't make sense when looked at in conjunction with your voucher. And so we gave it another look and we're trying to learn about it so that we can give better guidance to you about what we want in those blocks. And in doing so, I discovered that it's difficult. It was impossible for me to find or download the most current version of the 425. The post-award forms that you need are housed in grants.gov. You can download them from grants.gov in theory. I was not able to do so on my home computer, my cell phone, or my work computer. And I talked to other PTAC PMs who similarly were not able to download the forms. And when I downloaded the form instructions, there were two different versions and they were similar, but not exactly the same. So I decided to create PTAC specific form instructions so that we could all at least have the same expectation of what should go in each block of the 425, and that would meet the grants officer's need and not have extra information that we didn't need. So I created, yes?
I'm sorry, are we supposed to be seeing like a PowerPoint or a document while you're talking, or?
Can you see, yes, can you see the PowerPoint chart?
No, I see everybody's headshots.
No.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Let me share the screen again and see if you can see it. I'm glad I took a breath and let you speak. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Cool.
So this is a tiny image of the 425, and I'm going to switch over to show you our instructions, although I did send it to each of you so that you could see it for yourself, but I'll switch to that so we can see the highlighted blue areas, which are the areas that I changed. But I really, for the most part on this chart, just wanted to let you know that we learned that you've probably been struggling to figure out what to put on this form because it isn't well suited for our purpose. And the reason for that is, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you that the top portion of the form, and anyone, can you see my cursor circling?
Yes.
Okay, this top portion is not very important to us. We know who you are. The basics that we need on this top portion is simply some way to identify who is submitting the report. So the instructions are very specific and tell you to put your DUNS number, your EIN, that if whatever form that you're using, whatever version of the 425 that you have found and that works on your computer system, if that form allows you to input an EIN in the DUNS number block, by all means, feel free to put in your EIN. If it won't allow you to put an EIN, please feel free to put your DUNS number there. If it doesn't allow you to put either, then you can submit it just with your PTAC name. I don't think that anybody's form is that bad, but I don't want you to get hung up on if the instructions say to use your UEI and all you can put in is the DUNS. We're not going to reject it for that reason. Don't be that concerned about those blocks. They're not that important to us. The really important data for us on this form are the quarterly, is the cash and accrual blocks in block 7 and below. So we need to know if your accounting basis is cash and accrual, and then we need to know what period are you reporting and what is the period of performance of your award, and then all the dollar amounts. That's the meat of this report, and that's what I want you to focus on. We do hope that we can get the correct version of the 425 and that we can disable the edit validations in it so that you are able to submit your report with exactly the data that we've included in our instructions. But if you're not able to do that, I don't want any of you to be overly concerned about it. We are truly most interested in your financial data here. So I'm going to pull up the instructions that I sent to you all and share that with you now, just so we can briefly look at that.
Oh, God.
I heard you, Mary Ann.
That wasn't me.
It wasn't you. Oh my goodness. And now what, I don't see the version. I clearly have far too many boxes open right now. Okay, moving on. Let me see, what else do I have for you after this, if I can.
Sherry, Peter Kokotis, while you're doing that, just an FYI, we have invited guests on the screen from our controller's office.
Hi, welcome Massachusetts Controller Office personnel. I saw Martin's name. Peter, do you have the instructions that you can share with him, or did he receive them directly?
Yes, Martin has both.
Okay, I'm having technical difficulties right now. I'm using too much of my bandwidth. So let me keep in mind. So we're going to go through the 425 instructions sheet that I sent to you all in a moment. But the areas that I want to, your takeaway is that the content that matters the most to us is the data that you put in blocks 7 through 12. Okay, we want to know the period that you're reporting on and the dollar values. And the biggest change that you're going to notice, let's see if I can expand this form. The biggest change, is that quite big enough for you to get the idea of what blocks they are? This 10A cash receipts, 10A through C is well suited for agreements that are paid in advance. They're to keep track of the amount of federal money that has been advanced to you that you have in your accounts. And that doesn't apply to our program because none of you have requested payment in advance. So the PTAC specific instructions say that this block 10A, cash receipts, is where you're going to document all the federal payments you have received to date. So that you're not going to put in there invoices that you submitted. That is payments that you received. So when DFAS transferred the money to you, you document the amount you received here in 10A, cash receipts. You're not going to use 10B or 10C. We're going to use 10A just so the grants officers can check to make sure that you think you received the same amount that we think you received, okay? Then blocks 10D through H, those are self-explanatory. D is going to, 10D, federal funds authorized, is going to match the amount on your award. Strictly matching your award amount. That's the amount you are authorized to spend. The federal share of expenditures, federal share of unliquidated obligations, that's your federal share. That's not the total amount spent. That's the federal amount, the federal share based on the ratio listed on your award. The recipient share, this one is different. I think a lot of you were putting varying information in this block. And this one is one that we changed. Total recipient share required is the amount of money that you have to provide based on the amount that you have executed, the amount you spent. This amount is not the dollar value that you pull straight off of your award. And that's what some of you were doing. And it was making it look like you were it was looking like you were not paying your share, your recipient share of funds, because your recipient share required is based on your total costs incurred. So that's a change. So make sure that you follow the instructions, the PTAC specific instructions to populate that block.
Sherry, I hate to bug you for this.
Yes.
But I think we're guilty of doing that. You said it is not the host's share or the recipient share from the award, correct?
Right. It's your share based on your calculation of costs incurred.
Yeah.
Because see, Kay, if you were to, it's misleading if you populate 10I off your award and you under execute. Maybe you're under executing to the tune of $200,000 total, and your share of that, you're gonna, when you put in the recipient share required as the awarded amount, even though you are never going to be required to provide that amount because your share is a percentage of total costs incurred, what you would put in K, remaining recipient share to be provided, makes it look like your host has to pay money that no one is expecting you to pay because you're under executing. So we made the changes to the PTAC specific instructions so that your report would be more accurate. It would be a better reflection of the actual situation.
Gotcha. Okay.
The program income blocks, total program income earned, or total federal program income earned. It is important here to pay attention to what the description says. This block is the total federal share of the program income that you've earned. Block M, you're not going to use at all. We don't use the deduction alternative, so nobody is going to use block M. The PTAC specific instructions say to leave it blank. Block N, all program income must be expended using the addition alternative. And notice this does not say federal share of program income expended. It says the program income expended. So this is the total amount of program income expended. And then the instructions are going to say for 10.0 that the instructions have removed the calculation that's in parentheses here. The unexpended program income, you're not going to determine unexpended program income by doing a calculation line L minus M or N. You're simply going, because L is just federal program income. And what we're interested in knowing here is of the total income that was earned, how much is unexpended. And also new with the PTAP specific instructions is a requirement to enter data in block 12. You're going to enter your total program income earned, and you're going to enter, I forgot what was the second thing you're going to enter, third party in kind. You're going to enter the value of third party in kind in that block. So I'm going to make this form small again. And we have some, I think, questions in the chat. Let me see. There's some good conversation going on. Okay, someone asked, we also need a copy of the 425 PowerPoint. It wasn't provided in the email sent earlier today. Okay, all right. That's good to know. Thank you. I will send that out. And Denise says she's getting the SF 425 from GSA forms. I found it in another PM that was also having trouble. We found it in many places. The most current version of the SF 425 is dated expires February 2022. So we're going to continue work on that. I know that it would be ideal if the form that we could provide you with the form and the instructions and they work. I get it. That's the desired outcome. We were trying to use the standard form and it's proved to be very difficult. So we are going to continue to work so that we can post a form and instructions on our website that you can use without experiencing frustration. And the
Use this
question,
form starting now, if our reports are due in a week, we use this form, or do we use the old form, or is this started at the new start of our program year?
the form isn't different. The form is the same forms that you've always used. I mean, most of you are using a form that expired in 2011. There are newer forms online. The form you use is immaterial to us. As far as I can tell, the blocks that we need, block 7 through 12, have not changed at all in all these years. The form is immaterial. The instructions are designed to help you correctly document the data, specifically blocks 10A and 10D and 10I. All PTACs have been entering different data in those blocks because it wasn't clear what you were supposed to enter. We're not going to reject your forms as we usually have it in the past if we can make sense of it. We're working through this with you. So if you can't manage to follow the new instructions by the time that you need to submit your next report, just please review the instructions and try to use them for the following report. Okay, this is just a process improvement that we're trying to implement. It's not something that we want you to get really upset about. Okay, we're just trying, we think that this is helping. We think it's helpful. So let's see. So here's a question. 10I, J, and K is typically based on the recipient's cost share. 10I, J, and K, recipient share, yes, is typically based on the recipient cost share portion, not the expenses incurred. Am I understanding that correctly? You are supposed to put what is the recipient's share to be required of the costs incurred, the recipient share of the expenditures, and the remaining recipient share to be provided. So it's a cumulative report. So you're reporting what is the recipient share required in this reporting period. The next question, if we have met above and beyond the question of 10I, so if you've provided more recipient share than you have to, and so that 10J, the amount that you've actually expended, is larger than the requirement, do you want us to over-report, or do you want us to simply make 10I equal to 10J? I would like you to over-report. By all means, report your overmatch. Okay, somebody wants to go over the 10L through K again. So 10L, that can't be right. 10I through K. Okay, and we did just go over it again. So if you still have a question, go ahead. You could maybe unmute and ask your question. And also the grants officers can help you if you have another specific question afterward. We're always available for your questions. Where do we get the form that will let us add an attachment for block 12? Block 12. Oh, attach. So block 12 is a remarks block, and it says attach any explanations deemed necessary or information required. So if you need a continuation page, you could just use a Word document. Just attach a Word document, scan it together with your SF425, and then upload it that way. And someone wanted to reiterate, it's not the dollar amount or percentage pledged by the recipient, it's the amount spent to date from the recipient's portion. Correct. And a question, the third party in kind and revenue entered on block 12 is cumulative for the program year, just like the rest of the form. Third party in kind, yes, you're reporting your actual financial experience.
So Sherry, I'm sorry, this is Joanne again. I was actually working on doing my quarterly stuff this week, and I didn't go into grants.gov and pull the form, which I probably should have, but I noticed that the 425 that you have has an expiration date of 2019. We found one, and it looks basically exactly the same, with a February expiration date of this year, but that's the one I used.
Yes.
When I filled it out, block 12 has add attachment boxes, like upload a document directly to the form.
Nice. That is
So-
the most current version. The most current
Okay.
version expires February 2022. So that is the most current version.
Okay. Thanks.
And that's also the version that you should be able to download from grants.gov, but I was not successful. I keep getting an error that my Adobe PDF software is not the correct version to be able to view the form. And other PMs were getting the same. So I believe I did receive by email that form from a program manager. Thank you, Olga from Schoolcraft. And I can share it with everyone. But that's the most current version, and that is the version you should be using. But like I said, it doesn't really matter to us what form version you're using. It's always the best to use the most current version. But like you, I couldn't find any difference in the content blocks. I think the only updates have been adding drop downs and maybe some validation edits. So I don't want any of you to get overly concerned about not having the most recent version. Whatever version you're using to submit a SF 425 is fine with us. Okay, so I can see that I'm going to take the comments that are in the comment box and review them all to see if we can send out a frequently asked question page to everyone, and if necessary, revise our instructions again, because every CFO that we talk to recommends that we do it a different way. So we'll review all of these comments to see if any of your comments cause us to revise the instructions. And we're going to move on to the 270, which is the automated grant voucher.
Oh, Sherry, just a quick question. Martin Conowitz was unable to unmute, so he had some questions.
Okay,
Thanks.
is he going to unmute now?
I think he tried, Sherry. I don't know if there's another override control.
Well, I can see his instructions that he wrote into the box say our instructions for lines 10E through 10G, which are the federal share of expenditures, the federal share of unliquidated obligations, and the total federal share. He said they are the opposite to the form as it is designed. So I'm not sure. I understand what the opposite means, but I'll review his comments along with all the other ones.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I see Martin's square is unmuted, but for some reason it's not coming through. Thank you, Sherry.
Sure. Okay, so that is the 425. And once you calculate all your financial data to populate your financial report, then you're ready to submit your grant voucher. And grant vouchers can only be submitted one way. They have to be submitted in wide area workflow, and you can only select grant voucher. In the past, last year, you had other options. And last year when DCMA and ONR were administering awards for us, they each had different processes and they each used different systems to process the payment voucher through to payment to you. So when DLA assumed the payment processing, we made all payments go through a single accounting system and a single process. So you are all paid the same way. You all submit a grant voucher and only a grant voucher in wide area workflow, and you select SP 4800 is your issued by office, and SP 4800 is the admin by office block in wide area workflow. And then you have all of you have there are 4 different payment offices that might pay you based on your locations. So they all start with HQ0. So HQ 0337, HQ 0338, HQ 0339. I guess there's only 3 of them. So, and that information is included on the face of your award. So you need to make sure that when you get your new award every year from DLA, you're sharing that with your finance department and making sure that they know if any of those fields have changed, if they are the ones that are typing in the data into wide area workflow. If any of those blocks is incorrect, the routing is not going to happen correctly and you won't get paid. Wide area workflow it routes and it has requirements based on the voucher type. So for example, recently we reached out to a few of you because you were submitting your vouchers with a DCAA. You were submitting cost vouchers and you were submitting, that caused you to populate a DCAA block in the voucher. So it was problematic for 2 reasons. Number 1, DLA has no authority to review cost vouchers. And number 2, cost vouchers are a very specific thing, meaning they are a request for payment on a cost reimbursable contract, which is required to have a DCAA audit before payment can be made. So when you make a simple mistake, such as picking cost voucher instead of grant voucher, or typing in a DODAC for a DCAA entity into your grant voucher, we don't even know you've done that. It doesn't come to us. We have no visibility whatsoever that you've sent your voucher, your reimbursement request to the wrong people. So we do periodically run reports in the system looking for our award numbers to see if our awards beginning with our number, our SP 4800, we run a report in WAF periodically to see if there are any of those awards awaiting payment. And that's how we were able to find a bunch of them listed with cost vouchers. So I just want to impress upon you, it is critical you can only choose grant voucher because that's what this is. It's a grant or cooperative agreement. And the form that is created in wide area workflow and the associated routing and internal controls match the entitlements that a grant and cooperative agreement have and the internal controls that we need to properly, but not unduly, process your payment requests. So those blocks are the automated version of the SF-270 form. So when you submit your grant voucher in wide area workflow, you're going to see the blocks shown on this chart. And can you see the chart?
Yes.
Anyone?
I think
Okay,
so.
good. Okay, so
You're
the-
talking about the 270, right? When it has like number 11, computation of amount.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. This is the meaty part of your 270. I didn't copy who you are, who we are, who's the admin by. I didn't include those parts. This is the amount of funding that you're requesting to be paid. So when these blocks right here that you see under block 11, that is the automated version of a grant voucher. So when you submit your request for reimbursement, you again need to review the program income to make sure that if you have reported any program income on your SF-425, then you must have reported program income here in block 11B and show that you're going to decrease the amount of reimbursement requested by the amount of program income. So you want to make sure that that's matching up. If you have program income, you have to decrease it. You have to show it on block 11B and decrease the amount of funding requested by the federal amount of that program income. I'm going to pause for a minute and check for questions. I see there are some in the chat box. Okay, and Natalie pointed out to me that we also, I didn't put on the chart, but you also need to review what you submit to check for math errors. Okay, and here's a great question. I've been submitting a scan of a signed hard copy SF-270 in addition to the WAF submittal. Is that necessary? It is not necessary. You don't even have to create the hard copy document of a SF-270. When you type in the data into the blocks in wide area workflow, that is the only submission that is necessary. And Martin, I do appreciate your contributions. The things that you're saying require us to evaluate what that change, if that would be a change, and what would be the impact of that change. So I appreciate the content that you're submitting, but I'm not able to do anything with it at this exact moment. So does anybody have a question about this SF-270 that you submitted in WAF, the dollar amounts that you're requesting payment are coming from your SF-425? We use this data when we get the amount of total costs incurred from the 425, and we can compare that with the 1806 to see the number of counseling hours and events that you've provided. And that's how we can calculate your cost per counseling hour. And we're checking your burn rate. So when we review these 3 quarterly reports, well, 2 quarterly reports, the 1806 and the 425, and and couple that with your SF 270, we get an understanding if you're going to under execute your award. Natalie, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that anyone who has a dual budget knows that when they do the electronic version of the SF-270, they should have fields to put distressed and non-distressed budgets separately.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Someone asked, what is a burn rate and what is calculate the cost per counseling hour? Okay, a burn rate is the rate at which you are spending your money, the rate at which you're executing your budget. So if your award is for 12 months and it's for $12,000, and we see that you're in the 9th month and you've only spent $3,000, and we would expect you would have been 3/4 executed or have spent $9,000, we're going to be concerned that you're under executing your award. Sometimes that happens if you have subrecipients because it takes you a while to get your subrecipient billing, and we can understand that. But if there's no obvious reason for you to be under executing, the grants officer is probably going to check in with you to see why you're reporting that you're under executing your award dollars so much. We can also see if you are on track to meet your performance goals. So, I mean, we are using these reports to assess where you are with where we expected you to be and where you expected to be. So we can tell if you're running really behind on meeting your goals, or if we think if it looks like you're going to overrun your budget or underrun your budget. And the reason, like a main reason why we would care about that is if you were grossly under executing your award and there was still time in the fiscal year for us to remove the money from your award, we could issue that funding to another PTAC so that they could use the money to help businesses. Whereas if we do nothing and we leave it on your award and you never use it, it goes back to the Treasury. Okay, and I see is there one more question? Okay, no question. False alarm. Okay, so that's what we are doing with our comparison of those documents that you submit. Now, we know that your grants voucher might not always match your SF 425 and your 1806 because you are allowed to submit a grant voucher every month, and you're only required to submit quarterly reports once per quarter. So we're not concerned about that, and we're not trying to match those interim reports. We are still, your grant vouchers, we know that they're not going to match to anything, but we would expect you send a grant voucher that's period of performance ends at the same period that your SF 425 and your 1806, we would expect that everything's going to match up, line up. And if it doesn't, the grants officer will ask you to explain, why was it different? Sometimes we find that there's a mistake in the 1806 reporting, that the program manager isn't aware that X, Y, or Z was being reported or wasn't being reported. So anything can happen, and when the grants officer engages in the dialogue with you, we learn what was going into those reports and why they were reporting data that was unexpected. So in summary, this is large. In summary, the reason that this is just listing what we're getting from these reports. The 425 is listing cost, expenses, receipts. It's where we see your program income. You're taking your fair share of that program income and of that third party in kind. We're able to see that from your 425. The 1806 reports your achievements. That's what the public good, the federal funding that we gave you, it resulted in a public service, and the 1806 records that public service. The 425 federal financial report and the quarterly performance report are due on the same date each quarter. Every PTAC has reports due on that same date. The only difference is when your final report, because you get 3 months to submit the final report, that one, your final one, will be due on a different date than any other PTAC. But we know that we are going to receive all quarterly reports from almost all the PTACs on the same days each quarter. Just reiterating that the grant voucher doesn't have a due date and you can submit it monthly, but you have to submit at least one payment request each quarter. And that reminds me, some of you, that change, some of you have been submitting $0 value grant vouchers. That's not what we intended there. We don't want you to submit a $0 value grant voucher. We want you to submit grant vouchers regularly throughout your period of performance to be spending down that money. We come under fire when we have awards that are being executed, and therefore we're incurring debt, but we're not paying down that debt. So we want you to steadily voucher us and not wait a whole year to bill us with one bill at the end of the period of performance. When we did that in the past, sometimes we have PTACs that we have to make, we can't make you bill, but we don't want you to lose the money either. And we need to close out and deobligate the excess funds. So when your host does not submit us a voucher for a year, and then it takes another year for them to figure out how to submit the voucher or make the employee do the voucher, whatever the case may be, now we're several years in the future and still haven't made any payments. So we want to make steady payments. So that's what the intent is there. Please don't submit vouchers for $0. If it's a hardship for you to send a voucher once per quarter, we should talk about that. That is something that we made up to try to cause a steady execution of funds. It isn't meant to cause you a hardship. So if your particular host has a hardship with that, please reach out to your grants officer and we can give you a waiver. And we may find if enough of you dislike that, possibly we can take away that requirement. But understanding we're just trying to get a steady execution of funds. We talked about that the grant voucher should reflect the program income that is reported in the SF 425. And these combined documents are our evidence that you performed the work that was described in the PTAP statute, and it was in the quality and quantity that a prudent person would have paid the same amount that we authorized for your funding. The auditors require us to prove all of this, and so we use the grants officers' worksheets that they create based on the documents you submit. We show those to the auditors to let them know that we are doing our due diligence to ensure fiscal stewardship and good fiscal stewardship and sound decision making. So that concludes this chart. I'm going to stop sharing again. I see that we are at the end of our time. I want to see if there are any questions remaining. And if there is anybody who did not receive the PTAC instructions by email from me before we started this session. If you would please send me an email at sherry.savage@dla.mil. I will send that to you. And if you have questions about it, let's talk about it, because the 425 in particular is problematic. And I want to make sure that we have all the finance needs, that we can come to a consensus that the form is going to be usable for everybody to accurately reflect the cost situation. I don't see any questions, but I do want to make one last appeal. If you would like credit for this 2 hours of training, please right click in the participants block and rename yourself from Sherry Savage to your actual name. It's what AppTech is going to use to give you credit for the training. So if you are still named Sherry Savage, please right click and change your name. You'll know where you are because when you open the participants block, it will have me by the Sherry Savage, and you'll be in the top. I thank you all for your participation, for your excellent questions, and I hope to be able to provide much clearer guidance about the 425 in the future. So thank you all. Thank you for your patience. And thank you to my grants officers, Robin, Yolanda, Natalie. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sherry. This was a great planned program. It was excellent, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sherry.